Hello, and welcome to Week 3, Unit 5 of Application Development for SAP Business by Design. In this unit, we'll look at extending standard business objects. When we look at extending standard business objects, there's a few things that we can and cannot do. Mostly what we're usually doing is we're extending those objects with new extension fields. Extension fields on different nodes of the object, being able to show some other type of data that we want to related to a business object. After that, we'll usually take these extension fields and we'll publish them to other artifacts. So whether it be a data source for analytics, to the actual screens themselves, maybe to a web service. So we can take these fields and we can push them to many other places. If you've used the adaptation mode or key user tool that's in the front end of SAP Business by Design, it's a very similar process compared to that. You're doing the same thing where you're adding fields and publishing them to other places. We can do the same here in the SAP Cloud Application Studio, but now we can also write logic behind those fields, and we can take what the changes we've made and be able to transfer them to other tenants as well. When we also work with extension objects, we can also define messages as we could a normal object, and we can define actions. So then we can create a new action for a specific standard business object that does what exactly we want that new action to do. You'll notice though that all extensions that we do must follow the public solution model, PSM. We've mentioned PSM before, but what is the public solution model in a little more detail? So the public solution model basically contains entities from SAP Business by Design that are released for development and use in the SAP Cloud Application Studio. That means that core development has said these objects are allowed to be used, and these different parts of the objects, even goes into data types and other items, can be used to make your changes. This goes to, as well as business objects and their nodes and data types, it also kind of relates to enhancement options, to interfaces that we saw, or interfaces like web services, and then user interfaces like screens, which we've seen. Now these screens and web services, we don't always necessarily use the term PSM, but it's the same kind of concept, the release for us to be used and modified within the studio. Now we can use the Repository Explorer view to look at all the PSM info of standard objects. We've been there a couple times, but let's go ahead and look at it again. So I'm logged into the SAP Cloud Application Studio with my development user, and I have my solution open. I'm going to go again up to View and Repository Explorer. Now the first tab is Business Objects, and this shows me all of the standard business objects that are PSM enabled for our use in the studio. So we can see, for example, if we go down, let's select Employee. And as I select an object, it's going to show me info on the right. So we saw this earlier, we can see the namespace of the object, what's the deployment unit, what's the object type code, which we could use within some other parts of the application. And here's the public solution model content. What's the release status? If it's released, meaning that it can be at least read and viewed within the studio. If it's not released, that means we could not use it within the studio and our coding, things like that. Also, and if it's write access enabled, can we create and update instances of this business object? In this case, we can. And there's lots of other info about what the object is, how it's used. You also see even example scripts on how to create a new instance of an employee or to update one. All kinds of info about working with this object is here. And it not only goes into the root of the object, but let me scroll down a little bit and we can see, what is it at the top now? If I open it up, it'll show me all of the nodes, so the root node as well. If this is something that can be modified, what's the data types that are there for all of their elements and what are those elements. Common, for example, you'll notice there's something here that says node extensible. That means that can you actually extend this node or not with new extension fields. identification. So anything about the object that we want, that we need to know, is here in the repository explorer. Queries, actions, and so we will use this quite extensively when we're looking at extensibility. In our case, let's go ahead and extend the employee object. We've already been working with the bonus plan as we assign and create bonus plans for our objects, but I'm going to go ahead and say new item, and I'm going to say business object extension this time. And you'll notice on the right hand side that it gives a description of what we're trying to create, and it gives a clear description here that you're trying to create an object extension based on an SAP business object. Whereas the regular business object item is where you're creating an object definition specified on your own. So it tries to help clarify and guide you on what you're actually doing. Again, be sure to give the proper name here. If I don't name it correctly now, I won't be able to rename it later. So I'm just going to go ahead and say employee. You'll notice the extension is .xbo instead of .bo, which our bonus plan has. And now something a little different happens compared to when I created my business object. I have to give the namespace and the name of that business object. So namespace for us was business partner, and then the object we'll want is employee, of course. I could select any other object that I need to. Be sure you give it a meaningful name though, something that's relevant to the object that you're selecting. In this case, we just use employee. It could be used employee XBO, employee extension, EXT, whatever kind of convention you'd like, and works best for you as long as it's clear and precise. And so we see the employee object here. Now notice some different things are specifically extension annotation is now ahead of the business object definition. I do have the imports for not only the global data type but also the business partner namespace automatically. And instead of the name of my business object, it has the name of the standard business object. So it says this is an extension of this standard business object, employee. And then it shows obviously inherently the root node. Remember, anytime we have a business object definition, we always see the root node, whether it's extensible or not, but also any subnodes that are extensible. Now, employee, if we go back into the repository explorer, we can see that it has a lot of subnodes within its structure, but not all of those are visible to us. Basically, the studio is helping us out by saying these are the only subnodes that are editable, or I'm sorry, extensible to any developers. So it won't show us subnodes that we can't extend. That doesn't mean we can't use those subnodes in our scripting later on in our action files, but at least the ones that we can extend are here. So I'm going to use the common node. Typical node that I use when I'm trying to extend the employee object. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a few fields here. And the idea is that I'm going to provide a way to provide a fixed bonus. Our bonus plan so far has been variable, and so now I want to provide an option to say a fixed bonus for a particular employee. So I'm going to say fixed bonus indicator. I'm going to give an indicator here. That way I can say if this employee does have a fixed bonus, and we'll say it's an element. If I can type that, fixed bonus indicator of type indicator. And then we'll say again, label fixed bonus amount. Fixed bonus amount of type amount. Okay, so I have two new elements here. I'll be able to provide an indicator to say if there is a fixed bonus and then what that fixed bonus amount is. I'm going to do one more thing too. I'm going to provide a message. And I'm going to say message invalid bonus rate. And the text will be let's say the entered bonus amount must not be negative. And add my raises clause. Message invalid bonus rate. So I'm going to add a message there because I want to, and we'll go ahead and save and activate while we're talking. I want to be able to do that same check that you can't have a negative a bonus amount for a particular user. I always want to make sure that they are getting money, not taking money away. And so before I'm able to raise this message, I need to find a place to do that. And so I'll go ahead and modify the after modify to do this check. And once this activates, I'll be able to generate my script files to be able to put this in. Now, I could add an action here as well if I wanted to be able to do a check for this amount, but I think one of the standard events is okay. It's good enough for now. You'll also notice one thing that we can't do in business object extensions is we cannot add new subnodes. We're not allowed to add new subnodes as of today for any extension objects. If I want to have a new subnode, I need to create a custom object of my own and then associate that back to the standard object through some sort of key, usually the ID of the object. I can either make that ID the same as the ID of my sub object or of my custom object, or just store it in there somewhere. And we're actually doing that in a sense with bonus plan, right? You can think of bonus plan as being some type of sub node within the employee almost, and I want to be able to show any number of bonus plans for this employee. And so we have a bonus plan object that stores the employee ID, and we'll actually in a future unit be able to replicate a UI that makes it look like bonus plans are part of the employee or maybe related to it at least. That's activated now. Let's go ahead and create our script files. And like I said, I'm going to use the after modify in my case. You'll notice here too that if I make the screen a little bit bigger, that all of the subnodes have their own events. So they have also the after modified before save. I have the validation on save of my employee at the root. And if there was any actions for this standard object that I wanted to validate to say that they should or should not happen, I would also see those as options here as validations. So I could go in and say if this particular action of employee should be able to happen or not. For now, let's go ahead and say after modify. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and maintain this. Now I have, I have my code already available for that. And so all I'm doing in this code is, again, I'm looking for the employee, and then I'll be able to check. Actually, I don't need this code. I will want, frankly, this. We'll do a check of if this dot, and we'll go to current common dot fixed bonus indicator. I'll leave that as it is because that'll, if I leave it at this, I could say equal to true through double equals, or I could leave just the indicator itself to make sure that it's whether it'll both equate out to true. So leave it at that. And so if I have the indicator checked and this dot current common dot, well, let's do this first. If I have that selected, and then I'll do another if. How's that? This dot current common dot fixed bonus amount is less than 0. Let's go ahead and content. Let's say raise, and what was my message? Invalid bonus rate dot create as an error. Now I could also even put this in the validate on save and strictly enforce it so that way when the save happens that I'm not allowed to save it without this. For now, we're just putting it in here as a light rule, just for the purpose of testing. So now I've extended my object. I was able to put in a message and some fields and some logic. If I'm curious about what else I can do around extending a business object, I can always go to the help content, and if I go back to the scripting languages and scripting languages for the studio, there's the business object extension definitions. We already saw the definitions without the extension. Now we're going to look at the extension one, and this again will tell me all the info about how can I extend a business object definition, what's available to me. You'll even see there's some things, so for example, node is in here, and like I said, we can't add subnodes yet, and it tells us that you cannot create your own node within a business object extension, but they do exist, and it wants to give you some info around that. But what can you do for elements? Still, how would you define a message, etc. So this is also available within the help document. So that wraps it up for extending a business object. In the next unit, we will actually go ahead and extend the standard UI. Thank you very much.